My name is Josh Miller. I own River Stone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Thank you to Eukanuba for bringing you this podcast. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020 is what I feed my dogs, is what I feed the dogs at the kennel, and I've had tremendous success with it, so I would highly recommend if anyone out there is looking for a premium food to put your four-legged athlete on, go check out Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020. Also, thank you to Gundog Supply. Yeah, as I've said in the past, there are very few places that those of us that are gun dog enthusiasts can go as a one-stop shop for both hunting and training needs for our dog. But Gundog Supply is that place. So if you're looking for, especially as you head into training season, anything specific, tool-wise that is going to help aid you in your training season, go check out www.gundogsupply.com. All right, so, I have something I want to talk about today, which will kind of move a little bit out of the whole puppy theme that we've had the last couple of weeks, head in a little more towards training. But I would like to just kind of take a few minutes and recap and kind of go back on the puppy stuff, just to rehash a couple things, because we got a tremendous amount of feedback and very positively and very some very interesting questions that I kind of would like to follow up on, which I think you'd find interesting. But before I do, I want to give a shout out to Whitney for coming on. Many people commented how they enjoyed having her as a part of that, and I did as well. It's hard for me. I can't really, I couldn't, toot her horn for her too much while she was on, but now that she's not on, I can do that a little more. And I will say that Whitney, as you could probably tell, is a tremendous source of knowledge, specifically when it comes to the whole puppy progression, piece of it from start to finish. And I would say one of the things that I would wish for everyone out there would be the opportunity to be a fly on the wall and watch Whitney go through, these her puppy process, because it really is so much more than producing puppies. And the whole whelping thing in particular. So, the whelping process is something, again, I just wish everybody could kind of have, that fly on the wall experience, if you will, because whelping puppies is something that, if everything goes right, probably most people could do it. And most people could kind of, feel their way through it and, make it through it. And it's interesting to me when stuff goes wrong, how, the horror stories that you hear. That's where someone like Whitney, that has the tremendous amount of experience and knowledge that she has, I mean, it is incredible watching her spring into action. Because, let's face it, anything with animals, like, nothing is ever going to go completely right. And I can tell you from my personal experience, some of the most incredible things that I have ever witnessed have been in that whelping room watching Whitney as she does spring into action. Specifically, the one that I just cannot shake, and it doesn't happen often, but anytime it does happen, it is nothing short of miraculous, and it's incredible to watch, which is, stillborn puppies that come out and Whitney is able to bring them back to life. And it's indescribable. I mean, it's one of those things that I think, 99, probably 0.9% of people would go, shoot, unfortunately that puppy didn't make it, set it aside and move on. But, Whitney is able to, oftentimes, bring that puppy back, it's incredible. And that's what I wish I could bring to you guys, and I can't. I don't have the ability to do that, but I wish I could bring that to you. And so hopefully, as a consolation prize, I'll bring Whitney on periodically as it makes sense, and kind of insert her into some of these, and she can share more of that knowledge. But I really enjoyed having her on, and sounds like from the feedback we've gotten, you guys did too. So appreciate that feedback. But a couple follow-up items that I kind of wanted to touch on, because these were either questions or comments that kind of came through after in regards to that last puppy episode that I thought was kind of neat if we touch base on, because some of these I think are neat from maybe an expansion topic where maybe I touched on it, but let's take one more step into a deep dive. Or there's one in here specifically that I just didn't talk about, but it's interesting enough that let's talk about it. So, limited registration. There was way more positive feedback than, quite honestly, I anticipated from that. I think there was some clarity, from people that had questions of why, I would do that. And I know it's abnormal. I know it is not overly common for you to find breeders that only provide that limited registration. But hopefully, through that podcast, and if you haven't listened to it, go back, listen to the last episode. It will clarify a lot of what I'm talking about here. But hopefully, it sheds some light on why. What we're doing, again, is so much more than just producing puppies, that whether it's the financial investment I have into this, whether it's the emotional investment, the time investment, there's a lot to this. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people we're able to see from that last episode is how much goes into it. And so that was pretty neat. But one of the questions that kind of came up that I thought I would just quickly address was the comment that I'll read it here, which is, I always took the limited registration as you not wanting to sell to breeders. I now know more after listening to the episode, but I'd like to know, was this a thought process of why to do limited registration? So, kind of twofold. So not necessarily like it wasn't like the reason, right? It wasn't a driving factor of why. But on the same side, kind of yeah, because again, if you go back and listen to that last episode, there's a lot that goes into this, and there's a lot that we put into it. And for me, I guess just to kind of be blunt, like, yeah, why would I want to sell puppies to someone that is just going to take my work and my time and all these years that have brought me to here, just for you to get a puppy for what is a minimal investment in comparison, and say, well, I'm going to go do my own thing. So that's one. But two, as you can probably tell, especially if you followed along, I'm a very prideful person. I'm a very competitive person. And I'm always striving to better myself, better my business, better the people around me. And it's something I continue to push for. And so I'm very particular about protecting my name, specifically business-wise, because, this wasn't something that my parents handed down to me. This isn't something that someone, built up and purchased for me and handed off to me. I mean, everything that I have, I had nothing and built it from the ground up. And so that's one of the reasons I am so proud of what I have here in River Stone Kennels and everything that we've done. But let's think about the whole breeding aspect. So if someone were to purchase a puppy from me and then take that puppy and go do their own breeding, right? What I struggle with is I have now lost control of my lines and what they are producing, right? Because let's just look at this as a whole. So somebody purchases a puppy, takes that puppy, then breeds that dog, of course, later on in life. And let's just say they breed that dog to a dog that they should not be bred to, right? Like a very poor dog, or a mouthy dog, or a loud dog, or whatever it is, right? Well, when you look at a pedigree, and someone, gets one of those puppies, it's not what they're wanting. They look back at the pedigree. Well, who's front and center on that thing? River Stone, right? That's my name and my work. Now, the puppy that they have received is one generation or one step removed from my breeding program, right? Because as you heard in the last couple episodes, I am so particular of what I'm breeding and how I'm producing the dogs I'm producing. Well, I've now lost control if I allow someone to go tell that story for me. And so, for me as a breeder, I'd say, that probably has more to do with it, is not only protecting what I've done as far as, again, the investment standpoint, but protecting my name and protecting, the legacy, if you will, that we have built and what our puppies are going and telling the story for us, right? So these puppies go on. And one of my favorite things about being a breeder is all the stories and the emails and the phone calls that come through of, you'll never guess what DUK did. You should see what Maverick did. You should, and it's so fun. It's really, really fun to keep up with that. But you don't go and do that for me. You don't keep that control if you start allowing other people to go tell that story for you, because they're going to have their own opinions. They're going to have their own thoughts. They're going to breed to their own, dogs that they want to. I am trying to create something, and I believe that I have and will continue to have something special here. And I want to keep it that way. And that's one of the reasons I am so particular with this limited registration piece and why it is that we're doing what we're doing. So that's kind of a long way to answer that question, but hopefully that kind of adds some clarity to it. Next one is studying out sires. Why don't you stud out your sires? I would say probably a lot to do with some of the stuff we just talked about. I would have a little more control over it, right? Because I could simply say no if the dog wasn't what I was wanting, to breed with. But I think twofold here. I think one, part of it goes into the work that it takes to not only find these dogs overseas, but to get them here, finish their training, go through the process, test them, title them, everything, right? There's a lot that goes into it. For me, it has more to do with, again, just being so protective of the lines that we have and what we've created, that I feel like it's very valuable. And I just feel like it's not something that I want to give out and want other people to go run with, because again, at that point, then people could breed those next dogs or those next dogs. And if those puppies are not what I'm trying to produce or the standard that I have, who's in the pedigree? What name are they seeing? And if they're not if they're associating that name with something that is not my standard, I guess that's one of the big reasons why I don't stud out my sires. I keep everything in house. So the third question, this is the last question. I kind of want to recap before we get into the next topic here, the topic that I really wanted to talk about today. So the last one was, we got this from a number of people, so I thought it was interesting to address. It's probably that time of year, which is, what do you do with a puppy when you bring them home? And there was a follow-up question, which is, my puppy that I just brought home is not retrieving. What can I do? Okay, so there's two pieces of that. So let's address the first one first. So what do you do with the puppy when you bring the puppy home? I think we could go into, and we'll probably do a podcast on this sometime. It's just not what I want to do today. But I think someone's looking for like this secret sauce answer, which is something you're just not going to get. There's no secret remedy. There's no like, hey, you should be doing step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. What I would say is probably the most common mistake. Let's cover it this way. I'd say the most common mistake is bringing that puppy home and trying to drill things into that dog at 7, 8 weeks old. Let the puppy be a puppy. I think there's a lot to be said about that. And I think a lot of us, if we step back and assess ourselves honestly, we're probably guilty of not allowing that to happen. No different than kids, right? We oftentimes, make the comparison, these puppies to kids and how they progress and how they develop. Well, I'm not having, my 2-year-old daughter, I'm not having, her, go outside and, hit baseballs off the tee, right? Not yet, right? I'm not preparing her for the ACT, right? I'm not pushing her to do things that I want. I'm letting her develop. I'm letting her have fun. I'm letting her learn what life is about. And that's that puppyhood, right? Let these puppies be a puppy. You'll never get this time back. There'll be plenty of time to, hammer obedience, into their brain. There'll be plenty of time to, go through drills. There's be plenty of time to worry about, the things that they need to work on. Let them be a puppy. I think that's probably the biggest thing that people miss. The retrieving question. So it sounds like someone brought this puppy home and the puppy is not wanting to retrieve right away. So here's something. Now I'm going to speak to my puppies for a second, which this individual does not have one of my puppies, but let me speak to my puppies for a second. I tell all of my puppy clients the same thing when they take their puppy home, which is there's no reason to go home and do all these retrieves. I believe the only reason that someone would to go through retrieving work with a puppy at 7-8 weeks old when they bring the puppy home is to try to verify to themselves that they purchased a retriever. Why else would you do it? If you've gone through the process the right way and you've gotten with the right breeder, you've gotten with the right dogs, the right lines, the right everything, you bought a retriever. Assuming that you were talking about labs and a retrieving breed, right? But you've bought a retriever. You don't need to go verify to yourself that you did. And oftentimes what we find is that that you can overdo this at this young age. We hear all the time of these people that have these puppies. They say, oh, they loved your retrieve when they were little. We'd throw the tennis ball until they'd stop. Well, you start doing it enough where that puppy doesn't have that object of complete desire. Now, could you move backwards? Yeah, with some dogs you definitely could. So, this isn't something to panic about. If you just brought this puppy home, just back off again. Let the puppy be a puppy. There'll be plenty of time to progress through this, as that puppy develops and as that puppy gets older. But I can't speak to if you've done the homework, if you've gone through things the right way either. So I'm speaking to if they were my puppies or if you've gone through that process the correct way. So anyways, quick follow-up to the puppy stuff. We'll come back to puppies, I'm sure, at some point. But right now, I want to kind of head into training season because we are definitely heading there. And I know we at the kennel here at River Stone Kennels, we are in full swing. We have a full kennel. We are, definitely, now we're muddy. We're up here in Wisconsin. It is muddy. It is wet. It is not clean for sure. And I think we spend about as much time giving baths as we do actually working. So there's that aspect as well. But it feels good to be back in the training season. Here's what I'm gonna talk about, which is the mental side that I want you to think about. And when I say mental, I'm talking about for you. The mental side that you should be going into this training season with. And here's what is leading me to talk about this. We've gotten many messages, both emails off Instagram, asking about very specific advanced training issues that are coming up. Now, let me preface this with, it is very difficult and, to be quite honest, very frustrating for me to try to answer extremely advanced, dog-specific questions. The reason being is that I don't know anything about this dog for the most part. Now, if it's a client of ours, completely different. If I've seen this dog, if I've worked with this dog growing up. But if I've never seen this dog, I've never met you, never talked to you, I have no idea what you've done to this point, how you've done it. Do you have all the prerequisites done? Have you gone through things the correct way? And where you're hanging up and what exactly you're seeing. This isn't a cooking recipe, right? That's like, oh, all you need is one more cup of sugar and you're good. right? There's a lot that goes into this. So that's why I say it's frustrating, because I always want to help people as best I can, but it is so difficult, especially when we get into this more advanced stage. But here's one of the things I want you to think about. When it comes to any type of advanced training, when it comes to intermediate level training, sometimes when you enter this first part of the season, right? So let's assume that you went through hunting season, you had the winter, probably for the most part off, especially if you're up north, because let's just be honest, our weather just doesn't allow us to do a whole lot outside. As you head into the spring, if your thought process is you are going to pick up where you left off last fall, you've probably already put yourself in a bad spot. Because let's think about, one, the time that has gone on without a whole bunch of work there. So for us, most of our clients, they'll stop the quote-unquote training season, let's say September, October, because that's when hunting season starts. Then they'll hunt, say, October, November, maybe start of December. Then, again, I'm talking about for up north most times. Then the dog probably doesn't get work because it's cold, there's snow, there's ice, there's everything else. December, January, February, March. And now we're end of March, beginning of April. Now you're moving into training season. If you haven't trained since September, that's October, November, December, January, February, March. That's 6 months. 6 months that your dog has not gotten out and stayed sharp and stayed on top of what it was you're doing. So to think that you're going to pick up where you left off in September is ridiculous. You need to first assess, one, what screws came loose over the training season, because they did. It's just which ones and how far. And as we talked about in the past, the reason that I say that is because hunting is in uncontrolled situations, at least the way that we hunt here in the States. All very uncontrolled situations. So you're going to have some situations that have come up. It's fine. All you have to do is identify and work on them. Tighten those screws back up. Before you go into a specifically advanced work, and this is where people get hung up. People get hung up in this intermediate level where they've gone through all that intermediate style work and now they want to get it into advanced, right? Well, it's not a pickup where you left off and just, let's just take that next step. So what I'm going to challenge you guys with is looking at the process. So if you think about a couple episodes back, again, if you've been following along, I talked about enjoying the process, not the result. And this is exactly why. Because if you enjoy the process, you will actually enjoy stepping back and saying, okay, so this is what I need to rehash. This is what I need to rework. I need to go tighten this up. I need to take a few steps back. Boom, boom, boom. Now I'm back where I want to be. Now let's go ahead and progress forward. If you're not enjoying the process, you will look at that time of those steps back as a chore, as a frustration. And if you do that, you are inevitably going to push through that, probably not doing it as well as you should, meaning that you're going to have some loose ends that I promise you will see as you try to push through your advanced training. There's a reason that these steps lead into each other. Step 1 has to be done really well before you go to 2. And then before you go to 3. And then before you go to 4. Because when you're at steps 8, 9, 10, if steps 2, 3, 4 weren't done well, you will see the results of it. All the time when we talk about advanced training, there's so often that the answer to the problem is to go back to obedience. Go back to obedience because there's something going on there. That's what's making you get hung up. That's so often the answer. Enjoy the process. I'm going to share with you guys a quote that I heard. It was earlier this week, and I thought it was so timely with especially these questions that I'm addressing right here, and just kind of going into this training season, right? Because those of us that are in the situation, we just talked about those of us that have the puppiness and the puppyhood and early stuff. But let's talk about those of us that have a little older dogs. Okay, you're at the point that it's easy to say, well, my dog should be ready for this, or maybe push them through things too fast. It's difficult to take those steps back, especially with seasoned dogs that are like, hey, they have 2, 3, 4 seasons under their belt. You want to just keep pushing forward. It's hard to take those steps back. But let me share this quote with you. Sometimes you need to take your eyes off the finish line and look back at the starting gate to appreciate how far you've come. So again, if you know me, I'm really big into personal growth, personal development. That's what this quote is meant for. But this applies directly to our training, right? This applies not only to the dog, he or himself or herself, but how about you as a handler? This is something I am going to talk a lot more about because I think there's a lot to be said about it. Unfortunately, these dogs, they're not in our life for as long as we want them to be, or I think that they should be. That's going to be my first question when I get to those pearly gates is, what was up with that, right? Like, why such a short period of time for these, special animals to be in our life? But if you look at, from a handler standpoint, it's really interesting as you look at this journey that you're on. We're always looking at that finish line, right? Whether it's this let's say the seasoned dog that you have, whether it's the young puppy that you're starting to bring up, whether it's the finished dog that is 7, 8, 9, right? Like, you're always looking for that finish line. And sometimes to really appreciate where you're at, you have to look back at the beginning. Especially if you're in the class I just talked about, right? So if you're in that class with that seasoned dog that is 2, 3, maybe 4 years old, and you're looking just to finish the training. Well, first off, spoiler alert, the training is never finished. But if you can look back and be like, man, look at where this dog is at compared to a year ago, compared to 2 years ago, compared to puppyhood. Like, look at where we've come. Look at how far we've come. If you all of a sudden flip it around and look at it that way, now all of a sudden it doesn't hurt so bad taking those steps back to make sure that those middle steps are done really well. It all of a sudden isn't as frustrating to say, hey, maybe I need to go sharpen this stuff up before I move forward. And I also think it doesn't make, it makes you appreciate the process, rather, that much more by looking at it in that sense. This process is never ending. This process doesn't have that real finish line. We're always going to be striving to be better. We're always going to be striving to put that next level on us, that next push, whether it's from a personal training standpoint, whether it's from a hunting standpoint of, hey, I just wish here's a situation that I wish you would have handled better. Let's work on this. Whether that's from a hunt testing standpoint, like, yeah, great, I got my finished title, but now I want to get to 500 points. Now I want to get to 1,000 points, right? There's always something else to strive for. That's why I'm so passionate about enjoying the process. And so as we go into this training season, I know it's kind of a rehash, from before, but as you're going through and looking at these, these situations that you have, and these frustrations that you're struggling with, and these levels that you're trying to get to, be honest with yourself and look back and say, where am I at? And how should I mentally be going into this, this training season? Sometimes it's not as simple as, hey, I need a lining drill. Maybe you need to go back and heal first. Let's rehash that. I'm a big believer, if you guys haven't been able to tell already from these previous episodes, that we and our mental side dictates a lot of how our approach and how our communication is with these dogs. And this is just an echo of that. So those of you that are looking to take those next steps, I applaud you. I am super supportive. I want to be there for you. I want to help you. But before you do that, assess where you're at. Take a look back at that starting gate. Appreciate how far you've come. Appreciate that process, because it's going to make it so you enjoy that route towards that finish line that much more. I'd like to thank Lucky Duck for being a sponsor of this podcast as well. Lucky Duck, if you guys have not seen that crate, the Lucky Kennel, do it. It's 5-star crash test rated. It is extremely safe for your dogs to be traveling in. Think of all the time and effort you put into your dogs. you want them traveling in the safest crate that you can. So go find the Lucky Kennel at www.luckyduck.com. Also to Sitka. Sitka has changed the way that I not only hunt, but train, because I can train more comfortably. And when I'm more comfortable, I'm more effective. So Sitka, www.sitkagear.com. Go check out. They have not only the hunting line, but the everyday line. As you head into training season, I would highly recommend going and checking that out because you will love their gear. So thank you guys for spending this time with me today. We'll move into more training topics here as we get into training season, and hope you've enjoyed this puppy segments, if you will, these last few weeks. So thank you guys again, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.